Hey guys, so today we're going to be talking about chapter 250 of The Gray Man. I'm going to try to do these chapter reviews for The Gray Man. I know the releases do vary, and like this time we've actually gotten two chapters in less than a month, but typically they'll be on like a 4 month, maybe 6 month between chapters. And obviously I'll have to see how people like them. I just kind of want to talk about The Gray Man because it is my favorite manga of all time. I don't know if it will stay that way through the end because I'm worried it will get convoluted with how the story is going, but I trust that it won't and it will stay and the finale will be really good. I just don't want to see a Karama type situation with Naya. Like Naya's like, yeah, let's work together. It's more so maybe he ends up in his mind learning about Naya that way and then subduing Naya and like understanding where he came from and kind of creates a piece that way. This is a whole theory of like the four-way where Mana wants to be with Naya and Alan wants to be with Mana Walker, and there are the four personalities within two people, and maybe it will work out that way without anything happening. But that isn't even the point of this. I'm just kind of going into this right now because of how much I like D. Gray Man, and just that's what I want to talk about. So going into chapter 250, it starts by pretty reiterating just what we kind of knew from chapter 249. The main party that we've been with, which is Alan, Johnny, Link, Conda, and General Title, split ways where Conda and Title go to search about Apocryphus and as well as for Mana's whereabouts, whether he is actually alive, while Link, Johnny, and Alan go to the Zoogle bookstore to prove that they are related to Cross and that Cross told them to go there so that they can find out what the Campbell Mansion is, which will be a lot more difficult because sadly Tim Campy was destroyed, and that would have been the proof that he would have needed for sure. Just showing Tim Campy alone would have been enough to get him there. But without it, he'll probably figure it a way. We'll see it eventually, maybe a year and a half from now. But anyways, that's just kind of where the two main groups are going. But that isn't really what's focusing on in this chapter. We're actually focusing on the Noah because the Noah captured Apocryphus, which I'm I'm not sure if some of you guys forgot that before reading the chapter, but back in 2017, maybe it might have been earlier, because back in 2017, it was confirmed when they took the Earl back after the Naya Mana reunion, and like we learned like some of the lore about that. It's confirmed that the twins captured Apocryphus, but it's also, if you want to see it physically where they say that, I'm not sure. At that time, I thought maybe Apocryphus would escape, but now by that point, by 225, they know that they have him. It was in 217, which was 8 chapters before, so it might have been all the way back in like 2015, 2016, when Apocryphus was actually captured, which is insane, just how long ago it's been. So, and there hasn't been really much mention. I know he was in the backstory, and that backstory was interesting, but did take some time. Anyways, so the Noah have Apocryphus, and Apocryphus is seemingly what they believe to be the key to capturing and ultimately defeating the heart. Because when the heart of innocence is destroyed, all other innocence is no longer active, and they can essentially complete their vague plan, which is believed like the 3 days of darkness, probably back going to be related to the biblical times of Noah's Ark, but we don't know enough detail about what the Earl's endgame is right now. So, anyways, they're just trying to find the heart. They've been trying to find the heart since the beginning, like right after the first few arcs where we get introduced to a few extra exorcists. Then they're like searching for the heart. We have all the stuff that happens in the story. This is just kind of refreshing for anyone who hasn't seen D. Gray Man in a while, which is what happened. So they're trying to find out. And Apocryphus says the truth with a really creepy smile, which I believe was also in chapter 249. That Apocryphus, that smile was there, but I believe that to have been the Zoogle bookstore owner because of what that was. But we see this smile in both, and it seems like at this point it is Apocryphus because he says the truth, And then he goes on to say, and what are you going to do when you know the truth? Which essentially says this was Apocryphus and it's not the Zoogle bookstore owner. But honestly, looking at it right now, their noses look slightly different, so maybe the Zoogle bookstore owner is also someone with a creepy smile. And anyways, in this moment, he asks that to the Noah, who kind of just look at him. He seemingly is tied up through this doll thing where the hair is like holding his limbs so that he can't move. Um, anyways, kind of continuing on with this, it shows up where he says this, and he says it as the heart whispers still, which implies that we know that he can communicate with the heart, but it also shows that he is the heart's proxy, which we kind of also already knew from like all the stuff from the backstory. But it is interesting that he's being the heart's proxy talking to the Noah, who are the enemy of the innocents. So that's just kind of where we're going with this. And he seemingly knows the truth of what happened 35 years ago, which we find out slightly later in the chapter. But overall, just it's interesting. So anyways, kind of where we were at with this was just the interesting dynamic of what's happening between Apocryphus and the heart. But what I found, which is slightly off topic and it isn't shown in the chapter, is that Bookman and Lavi are not shown at all, which begs the question, what happened to them? Because from what we learned in this chapter, they were not able to find, the Noah were not able to learn what happened 35 years ago from Bookman and Lavi, or specifically Bookman, because Lavi was just there to help threaten Bookman as like, if Lavi is gone, then Bookman can't continually pass on their secret history. They're not shown in the chapter. They never revealed stuff. Does that mean they are gone? Or maybe they escaped? This doesn't really affect the current chapter, but it is just there as an interesting side note that they were captured by the Noah and now they're just not with the Noah, or at least off screen. Anyways, kind of continuing on with the whole Apocryphus conversation with the Noah, Apocryphus essentially tells the Noah that they made a mistake, and they always make mistakes, and it's the nightmare of the Noah, which realistically, from what we've seen, the nightmare of the Noah is the pillar that Road was talking about with Cross in the backstory, and like the Noah memories like took over Road because of how traumatizing the pillar is and the destruction of the other world. But these Noahs at least don't exactly know what the mistake is. And like Apocryphus doesn't really tell them. He's like, all of it, all you do is mistakes. And he references 35 years ago, which is when Nea took care of all of the Noah except for the previous incarnation of Wisely, the Earl, and Road. Like all the other Noah were defeated and taken out by Nea. And then he also mentioned 17 years ago as well as now, where 17 years ago, I don't know, it could just be because I have trouble keeping up with everything in the story, but I'd say that could be an Alan-related thing, but I don't believe so. Maybe we haven't seen what happened 17 years ago. Maybe that is when the previous user of the eye that Wisely had, or the previous incarnation of Wisely, was taken out. Or maybe that's the year that I don't think that's the year, maybe that's the year the Earl kind of broke post the Nea stuff. But overall, I could be forgetting this, and if someone else knows it, feel free to tell me because I am curious about it. The 17 years ago, I just can't really place exactly what that would have been. And anyways, it just kind of continues on with this where they are like, oh, you mentioned 35 years ago. And he's like, and then like they're kind of like, Apocryphus, you've taken the form of a human to kind of protect the heart. So they're kind of just trying to figure out who the heart is from this moment. And they're also like, why is Apocryphus so obsessed with Alan? Because it doesn't make sense from their standpoint. Alan is an innocence user, a parasite type. He has like he's loved by the innocents, which is also very useful. But from their standpoint, it's like he's a Noah. You could easily find another replacement for this innocence eventually. Why are you so dead set on saving Alan or kind of fusing with Alan or whatever Apocryphus' true goal is? And Apocryphus kind of just tells Tiki it's not, but Tiki is also like, is he the heart? Which also later in the chapter, he's like, I don't think Alan's the heart. Where I'll get into some theories, I guess, in a little bit, because I also am curious about the heart. Like, I'm assuming everyone is. And Apocryphus essentially says that he thinks of Alan as a angel, and he wants to raise and nurture him and protect him. So, like, he essentially raises up to be the protector. And even in the story, and I believe chapter 236, he kind of knows that Alan will destroy the Earl. So he's like, he's protecting Alan so that Alan can achieve that goal. And we don't know exactly how that's going to be. We don't know the heart's plan per se. We also, I feel like if I'm mentioning chapter 236, he says that after the Earl is destroyed, then the wielder of the heart will be revived. And of course, this is back in the story like 5-6 years ago. It's when Alan was first with Mana. So when he was like 8 or 9, I don't think it's set a time for that, but once again, I could be wrong. And Apocryphus was messing with all the stuff in that timeline. Obviously, Alan didn't know that, but we get to see that from that point. And anyways, he also calls Alan my Alan, and he then says to Tiki, who's asking these questions, that why are you still obsessed with Nea when, like, after what he did to all of you? Because Tiki looks like Nea, which if you watched Hollow or you read the manga up to this point, the first time that Alan sees Nea, he confuses him for Tiki for a sec. He's like, Tiki? No. So it implies they look really similar. And when we ultimately see Nea more, as we do now in the story, he does look like Tiki. So it's implying that Joyd still has like some attachment, or which is the memories that Tiki has of the Noah, to Nea, and we don't really get to hear more about that, but that's overall what happened. And Nea seems like disgusted with him, which we've seen before when they first interacted back in like chapter 226 or 225, somewhere around that area, when the Earl gets recaptured or rebrought back to the Noah after meeting with Nea. And Tiki kind of takes a second and be like, I resemble him, before wisely just blows the head off of Apocryphus. He seemingly doesn't destroy the innocents, though, because he mentions that it will be revived later. The sheer fact that he's their only lead to the heart, and that's their goal. They need to destroy the heart, like I mentioned earlier. So they won't destroy his innocence like they can, as we've seen before with the innocence of Dega, I believe, and like a few others. And technically Alan's, but Alan's gets revived. So anyways, so they destroy it. Wisely is like, I can't read his mind because he's innocent with my demon eye thing. And they're just all like, woo. The two twins who captured Apocryphus are like, yeah, he just kept talking. We're so happy that he's quiet. But then, like I said, Wisely says that he'll be revived later. And they're kind of sad again. So they're just kind of continuing on, and they're still trying to look for the heart. Obviously, that's why they didn't kill him. I'm kind of looking through this. I did take some notes before writing this. But overall, they kind of go through this, and Tiki doesn't believe that Alan is the heart, like I mentioned, because there's some things that would make it seem really unlikely. Based on the backstory, there's many times where he implies the wielder of the heart, or you're a soldier for the heart, which doesn't seem the same case of what he'd treat Alan, assuming Alan was the wielder of the heart. Because if he's loved by the innocents, Apocryphus would realistically do anything Alan said, and he wouldn't have taken out Tim Campy. But anyways, that's just kind of my two thoughts on it. So they believe it must be something to do with Nea. Nea is the reason that Apocryphus is obsessed with Alan, which could be the case. I've thought of the theory that it would make sense for Nea to be the heart, because I believe, and I could be wrong because I kind of looked for this, but I remembered it happening, but I didn't see it again because I was kind of skimming through the chapters, that Nea tries to use the innocence, and he isn't like, it hurts him a little, but he's able to use it despite being a Noah and it being like literally the opposite of it. Like if you put water on paper, the paper is gonna become wet and destroyed. So overall, like potentially Nea does have some secret history with innocence, and it would make sense because if the Earl is or Mana was destroyed by Alan, maybe then Nea would take over and hence be the wielder of the heart that was mentioned in 236. It could also be the Earl was the wielder of the heart, but he's kind of locked those memories away because we've seen the Earl doing that before with this old Mana persona. And anyway, so they just kind of don't really know what happens, and it's tough because they don't have their memories from 35 years ago. So they essentially just kind of press. They're like, Nea's going to be a major problem to us. So they're like, Wisely, you were your reincarnation was one of the few that weren't taken out by Nea. And the Earl is in no condition to tell us. Rode is also kind of really damaged from the Apocryphus fight and can't really tell them either, as well as she's secretly working with Nea from what it seems like. So they just ask Wisely, hey, can you tell us what happened? Which is weird that they're asking Wisely now, but Wisely doesn't actually know. But Wisely's previous incarnation of his memories apparently locked the memories of all of the Noahs of 35 years ago. So nobody in the Noahs can actually remember what happened on their own. They need someone else to tell them. But because of the major threat that Nea potentially has and the fact of the way Apocryphus is behaving, Wisely essentially decides, I'm going to remove the lock despite knowing the damage of what it was and why. I don't know why the previous version of me decided to lock the memories, but he must have had a really good reason for it. But I'm going to unlock it because it's just too crucial right now. So he does that, he removes it, and then we cut away from them. So we'll probably find out what happened 35 years ago later in the story, but it is interesting to then see how these Noahs will react now that they do know what happened 35 years ago and whether their opinion of Nea changes at all. Their focus in the story changes. Maybe they have a secret about the heart that they would know. We don't know yet. That's quite frankly simply how it is. And then we focus on like the last part of the chapter, which is Khanda and Tidal going to Mana's grave. So they go there, and Tidal uses his Maker of Eden innocence ability to create a statue that kind of just digs out the grave for them, and they take out the coffin. And they're hoping that Mana's in there because that's what Alan hopes, and it makes it a lot more convenient for them, naturally, if Alan was there. No, if Mana was just in the coffin. But it's manga, and you can kind of assume what's going to happen. He's not in the coffin. And the only thing left in the coffin is a paper flower that Alan made for Mana because Mana apparently loved flowers. And quite frankly, because of this, he puts that paper flower so it would be with Mana for the rest when he's buried. Sadly, it doesn't go as planned, and it's empty, and Khanda essentially ends the chapter by saying there's a good chance that Mana Walker is alive, which is very confusing from my standpoint because I don't know if anyone else knows the reason for this, but I've always been confused on the split personality thing and the rules on how this works. Because we see Mana, and the way that we see this is, I'm probably planning on making a video on this more, but generally speaking, really in like shorthand without any looking at evidence or whatnot, Mana was turned into a Akuma by the Earl, who is also Mana. But they seemingly separated themselves, and the Earl locked away that personality and the memories of Mana and blamed everything on Mana, and that's why Nea's gone, in his opinion, and he breaks. So that's Mana. But then he breaks, and then he goes out and meets Alan, and he's a second Mana Walker. Mana Walker then somehow is gone. The Earl shows up and goes to Alan. somehow he doesn't have the Mana Walker memories. Turns Mana Walker, who is also himself, into an Akuma. The Akuma gets destroyed by Alan, but after cursing him, and the Earl leaves despite knowing he's an innocence user just for the plot to happen. And now Mana is also still alive, which begs the question of what's the deal. And you could argue the Mana is just the Earl, which we see happen in the backstory. He turns into the Earl, and just that's why Mana's not in the coffin, because he's the Earl and they're just one body. But the split personalities part of it is what bugs me with that. Anyways, like I said, I'll probably go into that a little later. Let me know your thoughts on the chapter. I thought it was interesting. I hope we get to see what happened with the 35-year-old mystery. I hope Lavi and Bookman are still safe. And I am curious what's going to happen with Apocryphus, because I don't see him escaping this situation, especially when there's so many Noahs around him. But we'll just wait and see. I don't think his part in the story is over yet. And I'm excited to see what's next. If you like this video, leave a comment, subscribe. Feel free to give me ideas for new video content. Like I said, I'm starting out. It's only going to be my 4th or 5th video. So any help, I'd appreciate it. Have a good day, and see you soon.